Welcome. Thank you for joining us today for Crip'd Art Ecologies, Fermenting Crip'd Desire, Grief, Celebration, and Rage. My name is Lily Hearn Foundation, and I'm the Programs Director at CUE. I'm a white woman with long curly brown hair and big glasses, and I'm sitting on a mustard yellow velvet couch. Behind me are black curtains and a white wall with a small frame photograph above me, and there's a plant on my left. Before I introduce the event organizers, I have a few housekeeping notes. ASL interpretation will be available tonight and should already be spotlit on your screen. Live cart captions are also available in English tonight. If you click on the CC closed caption button at the bottom of your screen and select show subtitles, you'll be able to view those. You can also elect to view a transcript from that same menu that will show you more of the conversation at one time. The event today is being recorded. If you are not comfortable with the possibility that your face and/or name may appear publicly, please turn off your video now and rename yourself using an alias. Please keep your microphone muted while the speakers are presenting. This helps the audio quality for the group. There'll be time for Q&A after the presentations. If you have questions or comments, please use the raise hand button or type them in the chat. This is a safe space. Please respect the voices and privacy of everyone in the Zoom room. Anyone displaying inappropriate behavior in any form will immediately be removed. Feel free to private message any CUE staff member who has CUE in their username during the event if you would like to discuss questions, concerns, or problems. We also have an access doula tonight, Josie, who has a black and white squiggly pattern virtual background to distinguish her visually. Please let her know if you have any access needs throughout the event. Moira will also go over accessibility needs in more detail shortly. Crip'd Art Ecologies, Fermenting Crip'd Desire, Grief, Celebration, and Rage was selected as a runner-up from CUE's 2021 Open Call for Public Programs and is being presented tonight as a single event based upon the original programming series proposal from event organizers Moira Williams and Ezra Benus.
Hi, Lily, this is Kathy. If you could just go back to the title of the show so I could sign that a little bit more clear, please. I'm sorry to interrupt. Thank you.
No problem. The title of the show is Crip'd Art Ecologies, Fermenting Crip'd Desire, Grief, Celebration, and Rage.
Thank you.
Of course. So this was organized by Moira Williams and Ezra Benus. Moira Williams is a disabled Indigenous artist, disability culture activist, and dreamer, weaving together cross-disability justice, gatherings, and arts with ecosomatics and queer ecologies. Moira believes in access intimacy as an attitude beyond the Americans with Disabilities Act. Their often co-creative work leads with disability and ecology, approaching culture as something we actively shape together. Moira's recent work has been shown at the Works on Water Triennial, Landscape Research UK, and Eros Aarhus Art Museum Denmark, and has appeared in a field guide to Islanding and Jacket 2. Ezra Benus is a white Ashkenazi Jewish queer disabled artist and curator from Brooklyn and the Bronx, and completed degrees in Jewish studies and studio art at CUNY Hunter College. Ezra's practice engages with the assumptions around illness, time, pain, and relationships and rituals of care. He has presented and curated at the 8th Floor, Flux Factory, NYU Gallatin Galleries, Daedalus Foundation, Gibney Dance, and the Laurie M. Tisch Gallery, and is additionally one part of the duo Brother Sick with his brother Noah. It's now my pleasure to hand it over to Moira Williams to introduce today's program, panelists, and accessibility futures.
Hi, everybody, and thank you. Thank you so much. Welcome. I'm Moira Williams. I have long, dark hair down to my shoulders. I am wearing a collared yellow mustard shirt with black dots. It's kind of a leopard print. It's a long sleeve shirt, tucked up to my elbows. I have big, bronzy, coppery kind of colored metal rimmed glasses on that I may take on and off throughout the time that we're together. I also have 2 rings on my hands. I often move my hands quite a bit when I speak, so you may see that. And my background is a black and white squiggly background that indicates me as an access doula as well, so I'm happy to help you too. And I'd love to welcome you to Crip'd Art Ecologies, Fermenting Desire, Grief, Celebration, and Rage, where we will be celebrating and centering cross-disability, creativity, and emotions with all of you today, and our 3 brilliant disabled artists who I am so very excited and honored to get to know and also to share their work with you today. Our 3 artists today are Bl3ssing Oshun Ra, and Stephanie Alvarado, and Christopher Nunez. I am equally and deeply appreciative and honored to have organized our gathering with Ezra Venus, and for the generous support and flexibility given to both Ezra and I and everyone organizing the event. By all the wonderful people at Q Art Foundation, especially thankful for Lily Hearn, Josie Heston, and Gillian Carver. Thank you. And so now I'd like to invite you to join me in a land acknowledgement. And I may be looking away from the screen from time to time because I'm reading things on another screen, just to let everyone know. We acknowledge that a territorial land acknowledgement is a starting point. In our mobile virtual landscape, a land we enter daily and will now embrace in a multitude of emotions and resistance together. We together acknowledge that the virtual landscapes we connect and navigate through, like the physical lands we occupy daily and simultaneously with mobile and virtual lands, are equally contested lands. Built on continued legacies and practices of stolen lands, legacies of slavery and forced removals of native peoples by European settlers. Colonialism is a current, ongoing process. It is a structure eroding indigenous lands and culture throughout the world. We commit to building our mindfulness about participation with lands, both physical and virtual, that uphold systemic practices and beliefs. These regimes of power harm all indigenous peoples, indigenous womenettes, two-spirited and disabled indigenous people. These structures of power break treaties, erase control, erase and control access to ancient and contemporary knowledges, capital, technology, healthcare, and the environment, especially water. Broken treaties exist and move between physical and virtual worlds. Our territorial land acknowledgement is our commitment to working to center indigenous peoples and knowledges. It is a commitment to learning and unlearning and to supporting and participating in collective efforts to abolish colonial structures that continue to harm. I'm Moira Williams, and beaming in from my ancestral Sectog, the Black or dark colored land. They are the unceded lands, such a Hawking, Salty Land, Long Island, New York. The Sectog people continue from time immemorial to love, live, and celebrate life along the tidal waterways flowing into the Shekawasha-Kitan South large body of water, currently known as the Great South Bay. We continue to enrich the physical world and the virtual world in a multitude of ways. I invite you to answer the question, whose native lands are you on right now? Josie is going to drop a link into a Native Maps website. It's an interactive map where you can locate whose native lands you're on right now if you'd like to. And then you could, if you want to, I'd love it if you did, you could just drop in, find where you're located right now on those maps and just drop it in anytime during the time we're together into the chat. I welcome all of you here. Weme Utah Nila Nila Hashawan Yi Alaha Haki. All of us here will walk on this part of the earth. So thank you. So before we introduce our amazing artists and we get going with all the performances and great disability artistry, I'd like to go through some access notes with everyone. So this is a disability-centric space. We wholeheartedly welcome and support each of your body minds. All movement, ways of holding, time slippages, or messiness, sharing, and vocalization. In our shared space and time, we respect, recognize, and center those body minds who know the most about the systems that affect our lives. Queer, trans, Black, Indigenous, disabled people of color. Please be mindful of the space you and we are creating. This is an emergent space with common goals of supporting and sharing in community, moving as slowly as we need together. Orienting ourselves towards access is not perfectory. It is not a delay. It is not something we set at the beginning and then just move on from. It is the way we make space. It is the way we emerge and move together. We are not static, and we leave no one behind. We are committed to stopping and staying with anyone who needs support today. And again, if anyone needs any kind of support, please contact Josie, who is our access doula for today. And I'd like to introduce Josie quickly, if we can.
Hi, everyone. I'll just do a quick description. I'm a white person with platinum hair wearing round glass